I think some of the really surprising cities, and I would say they're probably surprising because partially because I hadn't necessarily, well, I think it's twofold. One is I hadn't necessarily looked there before, but the other piece to that is that it's not written about a lot in the tech press, and so I think the one that really sticks out in my mind would be Kansas City, Missouri. I think there's a ton of stuff going on in Kansas City. I think they've gotten a little bit of press because of Google Fiber, but they really have some really interesting neighborhoods, really interesting people that are working on new ideas there. The Kauffman Foundation, which specializes in entrepreneurship, is there. But really, other than that, people haven't really been aware of what's going on around there. So I think you'll continue to hear more about what's going on in Kansas City. I also, not necessarily it's a specific city, but one thing I noticed was the difference between cities that are really large. There's not necessarily a correlation between the size of a city and the amount of entrepreneurial activity. It's really a cultural thing. So you look at a place like Dallas. I was surprised by Dallas to some extent in that even when I was meeting with Trey Bowles, who does Startup Texas in Dallas, and he was saying that if Dallas has a problem, it's there's not enough entrepreneurs. He really believes there's enough talent and enough skill sets there, but there's just not enough people who are willing to take on that risk. So I was a little bit surprised that it's not necessarily always a dearth of funding, because they certainly have a lot of corporations that are willing to pony up some money. It's sometimes just the cultural barriers to what's going on. But I think just to kind of mention a couple other names, I was really surprised. Eugene, Oregon, where University of Oregon is they're branding themselves the Silicon Shire. That was a really cool, sort of interesting thing to see, where they have this relatively small downtown area, but they're a cluster of companies that are there that are really doing some cool stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I think some of the stuff in the Midwest is really starting to sprout up, and I think that's where things like Silicon Prairie News are doing a great job of showing what's going on in Kansas City or Des Moines or any of those Midwestern cities. So I don't think there's one silver bullet to what makes a startup ecosystem. I think that each one has different challenges. I think ultimately, though, there has to be some sort of just sort of starting point. And I think the starting point is you have enough technical talent. If we're talking about a tech ecosystem, you have to have enough raw tech talent. The people that are curious in what they're building, and they want to learn more, and they're willing to potentially take some risk at certain stages of their career. And then you also have to have people that really want to get into the nitty-gritty of building a business. And when you take those two types of people together, and also people who are good at marketing, all sorts of different skill sets. But I think when you have that sort of, I think of it as a raw material for building a greater ecosystem. If you have those people and you have maybe even some leadership that says, you know what, this is something that we want to try to make our city known for, and they can make the right connections in the city to say it's capital, or just having some regulations with the city to make things better. I think that's really what you need as far as a starting point. It's certainly not the silver bullet, but it is definitely something that I see as a prerequisite for really making things go forward. I think, and just as an example, I think that I was down in New Orleans for Entrepreneurship Week, and I really liked, I met a lot of really great people down there. I was concerned by they have a severe shortage of tech talent. So they've got a bunch of companies, and a lot of those companies don't stay in New Orleans after they get started, simply because after those first 2 or 3, software development hires or technical hires, they just can't really find anyone else unless they want people working remotely. And that's not really working remotely works in some cases, but not for all businesses, particularly when you're trying to scale fast. You want people to be all clustered in the same room together. So I think cities just have to sort of look at, do we have enough entrepreneurship? Enough people that are willing to take the risks around entrepreneurship, and then do we have enough people that are going to be technically capable? And if you have a dearth of one or the other, you have to ask yourself, what's the city going to be able to do in order to fix that problem? Not necessarily that it has to be a government thing, because I certainly don't think government should take a lead in it. But I think just the people that they believe in that community, they should ask themselves that and try to figure out a solution that fits their own city. I believe that the role that I can play in DC since I returned is to help other people in the ecosystem who are actually doing all of the work to make them better at what they do. and to hopefully give them some ideas and engage with them for how they can, hopefully better run their tech meetups. Because a lot of people who are running those things, it's a really difficult task. It's a really difficult task to run events and meetups and just all those things in general. And so it really is a thankless job. So where possible, I try to make introductions and I try to get other people involved. I think that's one of the key pieces. One of the key takeaways that I saw was that even if you have really strong leadership in a city and in an ecosystem, you need other people who are able to play some support roles. And so I think that's where I've tried to fit my own experiences back into DC. It's not that I'm going to go and start another lean startup meetup. It's that I want to give back to the people who are already running those groups, who I think are doing a good job, but maybe overwhelmed with, particularly if their day job takes over at some point and they can't manage everything. How do we get not necessarily me taking on all the tasks, but also get other people who are involved, who are interested in being involved, to help them out and to be active, engaged members of that group.